Well, hello and welcome to the third episode of NETSOL's Transcend AI Labs Podcast. I'm your host, Erik Wagner, the CMO at NETSOL, and today I'm joined by three esteemed guests. Starting first on my right, we have Faraaz Ghauri, VP of Digital Retail. Faraaz leads NETSOL's digital retail business in the US, driving innovation at the intersection of automotive and technology. With over a decade at NETSOL, he's helped transform and shape partnerships with leading OEMs and dealership groups, including the launch of Transcend Retail, a platform redefining how vehicles are bought, financed, and sold. Across from me, I have Faizaan Ghauri, the Chief Strategy Officer at NETSOL. He's been with us several podcasts in the past. He has over 15 years of experience. He specializes in digital transformation and strategic expansion. And then finally, on my right, I have Richard Howard. Richard is an advisory board member at NETSOL. He's a distinguished automotive executive with extensive leadership experience at Daimler Financial Services. From 2021 to 2024, he was the president and CEO of Daimler Truck Financial Services of the USA and sat on the global board of management. Earlier, he served as the senior VP of sales, product strategy, and marketing at Daimler Truck North America, where he led a team of 900 overseeing $20 billion in revenue, transforming sales and product strategy. Awesome. Well, super excited to talk a little bit today about digital retail and the fast-changing automotive landscape here in North America. With that, I'd like to quickly start with a fun question here. What do you drive today? And what was the story behind you getting it? And maybe I'll start with you, Faraaz.
Yep, great to be here on my first Transcend podcast. So I'm gonna give you the car I drive today and the one before that. So today I drive a Lucid Air, and how did I get it? It was a fully online purchase experience. I didn't touch the car or feel the car or see my car until I picked it up after I had already done all of the purchase and paperwork online. But the number of influencers we have now that do car reviews, I did a bunch of research online to make sure that I could get as close to a test drive as possible without having to go there and test it out. The Lucid experience online is also something I really appreciate. They have a beautiful website, feels like a very immersive experience. So really, kind of fell in love with it through my research process. And I had seen it on the road, and it was something I always eyed. And I had passed by a showroom, maybe a year or two back, and kind of always caught my eye. So yeah, that's the story behind that. But one more, the car before that was actually a Mini, and I also got that fully online, no test drive or anything. And the story behind that is because we developed Mini's digital retail platform, long project, which I led with an amazing team. Couldn't have done it without them. But essentially, when we launched the program, I was the first purchase through the app that we built. So some would call it like the most expensive test case we might have ever done. But it was amazing to experience what we had built and to live the vision that Mini had and that we had to do everything online. When I got to the dealership, it was 10 minutes, just a couple checks that I am who I am. I got my keys and I was out the door. So yeah, that's awesome. Passionate digital retail.
Eat your own cooking, right?
Exactly.
Faizaan, what about yourself?
Well, I actually don't have a car. So I'm a new Austin resident. I live about 30 minutes walking from the office. I wanted to increase my step count, so I walk to and fro. But we're also sitting in the middle of August in Austin now, so
Not a lot of walking.
not a lot of walking, more scootering, more Waymowing. And then on the weekends, my building actually has a car share service. So I can rent a Mercedes GLC
That's amazing.
for $15 an hour or $100 a day. And yeah, I'm experimenting with it. So far, it's going well. The step count is getting higher. Before that, I was driving a Tesla, and that was actually through a subscription service. So yeah, very open to new models. Unattached actually to owning a vehicle, but that can probably last for a little bit until I settle down and get married. And so if my future partner's out there, I will own a vehicle. I'm just not there yet with it. So
That's amazing.
yeah.
Richard, what about yourself?
Yeah, Erik, firstly, great to be here. So yeah, thanks for setting up the session today. Of course, being a kind of Gen X, I bought my car from a dealership, Lithia, Mercedes-Benz dealership. The car I love is a G-Wagon. So yeah, the reasons why, I would say, not just it's a beautiful, great product. We spend a lot of time in the mountains. So when the winter comes through up there in the west part of Oregon, or if you're spending time up in British Columbia, with a lot of snow on the ground, I mean, that's quite the machine. So always kind of love the product, and a bit of a man of habit. I would say it's the fourth one we've owned, so we definitely love the product.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of online digital, we got an opportunity with Lithia to talk to them. So in terms of that process, maybe the classic purchase product approach for Mercedes in a way, but definitely opportunities to kind of bring digital into play for the team there at Lithia. Maybe I should share that with you. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Awesome. So when did you first start getting interested in digital retail?
Yeah, so really, it's been NETSOL's interest, I would say, and we had an opportunity to realize that interest. I mean, in NETSOL's DNA has been core auto finance and leasing, asset finance and leasing technology. And, over 30 plus years, we've had a lot of success there. We've worked with so many automotive companies. But in like the early 2010s, that's when a group within NETSOL really started to look at the future and digital transformation and how we can get into other areas, in the same vertical and even a little bit beyond that core finance and leasing vertical. So we started to conceptualize cool new ideas, digital applications, different technologies. And one of the ideas was, what if we created the Google search of cars and buying cars, and just really, how do we make it easy to buy a car? So we had a bunch of concepts that came out early 2010s, mid 2010s, but then we had an opportunity just around the time of COVID 2020, where essentially Mini was looking to create a digital end-to-end purchase experience for the end consumer and enable the dealer to adopt that kind of channel. So very forward thinking on their part, and through great relationships, through being a known entity in the industry, the opportunity landed on our lap, and I had to sort of step in and lead that project. And it was, it was quite a journey, days and nights, and getting that product launched. We managed to deliver that quite quickly within 7 months for the initial build of it. And, just to see, to experience vision coming to reality, like vision we had 5 years ago, 5 years later, we're actually realizing that was really eye-opening, really motivating, inspirational, and really was the beginning of our digital retail journey. which now, luckily we're getting a lot of traction out of that. So yeah, I've just grown a passion of digital retail, and, really signified a moment where NETSOL transcended beyond, something we were always doing and used to, and something we were doing quite well, but doing something a little different, a little more creative and innovative and modern, and succeeding in it. So, that's kind of the rest is history, and now we're on a really exciting path to go much further in that space.
And strategically, what does that give us, right?
Yeah.
That Steve Jobs always had a famous quote that if you follow the end customer and work yourself backwards, you'll never be led astray. And that's really what we get out of digital retail. We are now, whereas we were traditionally B2B, working with the finance company, now we have direct interaction and touch points with the dealer.
Yep.
And we're understanding on a real-time basis how they are adopting or accepting our technology, what they're adopting, what they're not accepting. And of course, with the end consumer as well. The end consumer is typically the most fickle when it comes to user experience. So if you're able to get the dealer and the end consumer on your side, that whole domain and knowledge, that ends up also translating into the finance company as well. It's going to help us. It's going to help us improve our user experience across the board and sell just a full stack value proposition.
Richard, what about yourself?
Well, I think it's pretty amazing, Erik, to see what the company has done in terms of not only developing kind of world-class financial services solutions for our dealers and our customers, but as mentioned, our kind of move then into digital retailing. So from that point of view, I think it's much more than just the kind of digitalization of an existing process. It's looking really from a point of view of informing the customer at the fingertips in terms of the product options which are available, taking it clearly to final transaction phase where finance is part of that transition. So an end-to-end process. I think it's pretty amazing what the NETSOL team has done, particularly in the 7 or so months in terms of the development. But I think the magic is also when we have a full understanding of the financial services solution space, combined with this retail digital end-to-end process. There are not many companies like NETSOL Technologies who understand both digital retail, have intimate knowledge of the finance needs of a customer. And I think bringing those two together in a really seamless, transactional, but customer-focused way is really where that kind of magic happens. So great to see that. And definitely I think it's applicable to all kind of, I would say, dealers, regardless of what type of product they're offering. It's all about information, in the customer's fingertips, so to speak, but speed of transaction and information on the product in a way, as you said, like a Google search, where you have the comparability of that product compared to others out there in the market today.
Awesome. Yeah, totally. Faizaan, I'm going to ask you the next question. So looking ahead at the next 12 months, what do you think some of those big shifts or challenges that OEMs and dealers are going to start to have to face?
Yeah, well, if we look at the next 12 months, I mean, there's a few major hurdles or challenges or opportunities.
Sure.
Of course, there's tariffs.
Yeah.
What do tariffs mean? I think it's going to take a year to see it actually play out. This experiment we're running right now, I think you can only at best be neutral on it. We will find out what it means for supply chains, what it means for bringing manufacturing back on board here, what it means for EV consumption. Technology-wise, I think you will see a lot of AI improvement over that time. We were just in the car talking about Waymo's rollout in Austin, which, if I take a Waymo to the office rather than taking a normal UberX, it's probably about a third the price right now. So successful here. You look at Waymo's market share in San Francisco right now. So it's overtaken Lyft.
Really?
It's overtaken Lyft.
Wow.
And it's coming for Uber right now. Uber's market share is not growing. So Waymo is in sort of a parabolic state. So you're going to continue seeing that rollout in these mobility models. And I think mostly in cities. I mean, I know there's a few other cities. The robotaxi is also, we just saw a robotaxi on the way over here. So yeah, I think there's a lot of sort of experimentation going on. We're going to see how that plays out, whether it's on the policy side, whether it's on the technology side, and should be interesting to say the least.
Sure.
Yeah.
Faraaz, what about yourself? Any thoughts in the next 12 months?
Yeah, I mean, definitely affordability is going to continue to become more of an issue. You know, the next generation of buyers are not buying so much, you know, as previous generations did, bigger assets, right? So that creates pressure. But what they are, the demand for more transparency, more convenient, Amazon level type of ease in big ticket purchases is only going to grow. I think what we've already seen is digital retail has become a normal practice for dealerships. There's plenty of tools out there. A lot of them do a lot of things really well. But I think the focus is going to turn towards more on establishing a very structured and robust digital retail process. And it's going to be beyond, it's going to continue to go beyond just a way to capture digital channel leads. And it's going to turn into, how do you master the full process?
Yep.
How do you master the omni-channel dynamic? Meaning, you know, you start a process at home, whether you start a process in store, can you continue that process elsewhere seamlessly? You know, are you starting at home, and when you come in, is it like you didn't do anything and you're starting over? It's going to be those areas, you know, that are going to be more of the OEM's focus on the dealer networks. And, you know, from what I've seen working with a lot of our dealer partners,
Sure.
it's even really their focus is to establish the right process and to bring the best out of, you know, the digital tool sets. So, yeah, I think in summary, the tools and you know, the need for digital retail is pretty well known and well understood by the dealers. Now it's going to be about really refining the process.
So is it fair to say a lot more focus on customer experience at both the dealership and the OEM levels?
Absolutely. I mean, to give an example, when we were first building out, you know, we had thought that, you know, a lot of what you see on dealer websites, lead forms or digital retail tools, you need to give your personal information and sign up before you get, you know, to see numbers. That's typically what people might view as what dealers want, is they want that personal
Sure.
information so they can turn that into a lead and follow up and get that person into a vehicle. But in working with dealers for 5 years now very closely, most of them actually don't want to force that, and they want to allow the option for customers to you know, to do some budget analysis, to calculate their payments before they even give personal information. So, you know, I think there is definitely a shared interest among OEMs and the dealer networks to, you know, move towards a more customer obsessed mindset, because ultimately that's how you drive you know, sales, but also loyalty and retention.
Yep. Totally.
No, they're great points. Erik, to kind of build on that, so looking into the next 12 months, I think the first thing to say as a kind of new member of the team is that at NETSOL Technologies, you know, we do a considerable amount to support the kind of building of ecosystems of OEMs and dealer groups. So
Yep.
really to underline that, I think as we spoke about previously, you know, not only just having deep, intimate understanding of digital retail, but also our financial knowledge, which goes back 20, 30 years, leveraging both of those kind of deep knowledge and information points is really important. But what we do know is change will continue, and as we see it now, change is accelerating. I love the point as well around CX, customer experience, and being a previous, I would say, customer fanatic. All great companies do a tremendous job looking after their customers and making business easy. And one that I've admired for a long time is Carvana. So the other kind of theme, I think, when we look into the next 12 months is the continued development of AI. And Carvana have got a tremendous approach in terms of focusing on their marketplace and then using AI to really accelerate customer experience in ways that we've not seen before. So if you've not seen it, really check it out. Their program, working with Microsoft under their program, which they called CARE, really uses AI in a very practical way to listen to all kind of customer touch points and information. And then AI itself is helping the management there really crystallize areas of improvement in their business system, which really drive much higher levels of customer engagement and customer experience.
Wow.
I think it's one of the best approaches I've seen in recent times. I know the team is really on it there. And I think it's a good example of practical applications of AI and AI supporting transformation of customer experience. So if you've not seen it, check it out. Really good one.
That just makes me think about also just on the AI piece, because I think, you've had all this model innovation over the last few years, but really if you look at AI use cases that are in production and deployment, operationalized, there's still very few in there. So the Carvana example is quite telling that they've gotten there, but hopefully over the next year, you actually see the gap start to close. You actually see now where everyone has sort of moved away from the gee whizzery of the technology, which of course they have a proven use case in chat, right? But I think the gee whizzery of the technology is now going to be replaced by really tangible use cases that are enterprise grade and end up into production.
That's a great point.
Well, why don't we stick with you now? Let's take that same question and let's think about the next 5 years. What do you think is going to happen to the automotive industry, here in North America? What are some of those changes that we have to look forward to?
Yeah, well, there's 3 charts in my head that I'm thinking about, and one we kind of talked about in the beginning, right? It's about demand, and demographic demand. So if you take the sort of distribution curve on new car sales, you're going to have Gen X be a major component. You're going to have millennial be the Gen X and millennial are the 2 major components, right? I'll call Faraaz Gen Z, although he's more of a cusp, and if anyone can't tell, he's my younger brother. So I'll call you a Gen Z here, but they're growing as well, right? And what are we seeing? We're seeing, particularly in the millennial and Gen Z cohorts, at least 70% of them want to at least start their journey digitally, if not start and finish their journey digitally. So we have to take that into account, number one. Number two, it's really important to look at sort of, if you boil it down to first principles, if you look at the key drivers for economic growth in our industry, it really comes down to cost of energy and cost of compute. The cost of energy right now, and we can put it in the lens of the US and China, right? China over the 21st century has gone nearly parabolic in energy output, right? The US is still on a linear path. That trajectory, probably for the US to continue being competitive when it comes to AI, when it comes to EV, you're going to have to see the US sort of increase that slope. Today, and how that ends up translating, let's say in electric vehicle, is that you go from today, the US electric vehicle sales are about 6%. China today is 40%.
Wow.
You had to go back about 7 years ago to where China was 7 years ago to be at where the US is right now. So if we take the best case scenario, let's call it the China scenario, you're at 50% EV adoption in new car sales 5 years from now. Probably a more base case type scenario is 30%. But ultimately, what is that going to mean? That's going to mean there is somewhat of a recomposition.
Yeah.
We think that car sales are going to stay pretty consistent overall, 19 to 20 million a year in the US. But it does mean that there could be new entrants that really grow from here. And of the traditional players, there are going to be ones that get it right. Some of our customers we work with, we think they've gotten that sort of mix between EV and ICE right. And some who may have challenges,
Yeah.
and they're going to have to find ways to catch up. I think the last piece is the cost of compute as well. And again, both of these are upstream to the thirst for AI, right? We can't get enough data centers out there. I think Meta announced recently that they're building a data cluster that's going to be the size of Manhattan.
Wow.
Right? So, of course, cost of compute as it comes down, as more NVIDIA chips get out there, I'm sure there's going to be a new, there's going to be a few generations after Blackwell that will get out there. But we see that demand being eaten up, and that's going to drive autonomy. That's going to drive more electric vehicle production. And that's also going to drive how AI and the distribution and the technology we create. It's going to really drive sort of how distribution changes around agentification as well.
Awesome. Faraaz, what about yourself?
Yeah. So, I think in the last 5 years, every year it gets faster and faster with technology advancement. Obviously, AI is the big one. But I think over the next 5 years, things will only get more connected. So from a digital retail perspective, the experience of buying a car or subscribing to or leasing or financing, and the experience of using that car and how that car is utilized, for the provider of that vehicle, or underutilized, and how it's reutilized, we will see mobility and commerce merge more. And hopefully that means that data is a little more open, less silos, and we see more intelligence around the life cycle of an asset, around the life cycle of a consumer's buying and usage behavior of that asset, and how that feeds into remarketing to that same consumer, remarketing that vehicle to another consumer. So I think that's my sort of bold vision of seeing a more connected, a more seamless experience, not just in the retail side, but also in the usage of vehicles. And, that kind of forms part of a vision that we have, is how we can support that ecosystem and create those connections and make that seamlessness more possible. So absolutely, I think that's going to be a big play. I'd also love to see, one of the things that I think I miss out on in the digital, even in the most modern digital retail experiences out there, is again the feeling of that car. And of course, like I said, I did my research. I looked at reviews. I love the immersive, brand websites. But in that transactional experience, you kind of a little bit lose the feeling of the car and the experience of being inside of the car. And I think AI is going to help, and the way we interact with software, might not be on the phone so much, might be, in your glasses, in your contact lenses, in your brain, how we interact commercially. We will see more immersive, hopefully we will see more immersive experiences. Just imagine, those great commercials you see, car commercials, driving in the Swiss Alps, racing through, got your beautiful girlfriend or wife, imagine you see yourself in those ads experiencing the car that you want to buy. So I think it's, again, mobility and commerce will become more immersive, more connected, and will of course benefit the end consumer, but will be a very interesting interesting edge for the OEMs and the dealer networks.
Cool.
No, that's a great point. I would say that kind of building on that ecosystem, which will be kind of developed in that kind of, say, 5-year time frame, will potentially be, very different from the one we experience today, for probably 3 reasons. And some of that we saw on the drive over. 3 things changing our world is kind of zero emission vehicles, the combination of autonomous technologies, and AI. So this in itself is really changing the way that we as consumers or businesses kind of experience the product or services. So particularly I think from a NETSOL Technologies point of view, Erik, one of the big kind of opportunities we have is really, as kind of touched on already, is to develop the ecosystem for our OEM partners, or the ecosystem for our dealers and dealer groups. And really, I would say kind of bringing into those kind of opportunities our kind of global experience, and spent a lot of time globally with my previous employer, Daimler, and NETSOL, and looked at the business from a global and also local point of view. But as already mentioned, in China, we already deal with 80% of all the automotive players in China today. So within, I would say, NETSOL Technologies, we have deep understanding of zero emission business, complexities, technology, and particularly the customer interface. So I think when I think about the kind of future in the next 5 years, it's more the fusion of those 3 key technologies, fusion of zero emissions with AI and also autonomous technologies, and how that's going to impact the kind of machine-human interface in ways that we can continue to transform the customer experience, the dealer experience, or the OEM experience. So really exciting times. A lot of opportunity for us to really be the partner of choice for our business partners. And at the center of that, of course, is the customer, and how do we continue to transform that customer experience in ways that others can't. That's our opportunity.
Cool. That's great. Faraaz, I'll point this next one to you, but are there any specific innovations within automotive retail right now that have you most excited?
I think I'm most excited. So I'm most excited to prove to the dealers, especially, that customer obsession, and a lot of them we don't need to prove to, but the customer obsessed mindset is actually could be much more profitable, much more exciting for them. It may not seem that way for many today, but I think Apple is a great example. Maybe the most customer-centric, obsessed company could be the most profitable company in the world today. And that's where we're looking at building predictive insights, upselling tools, based on how the customer is navigating a website, based on their previous purchase history, based on data that is available, to our clients, position certain based on where the customer lives, the customer's situation at that time. Do they have a family or not? Are they in a city with a lot of potholes or not? Then let's position products that actually, help the customer and make them feel good about making a big purchase. A big resistance, where there is resistance to digital retail today, is about profitability, about F&I.
Sure.
How are we profiting, upselling products? So we're really interested in building the right tools using AI to deliver those insights in real time, and even position those products on behalf of the dealer, to help them with profitability, but also really meet with the customer where they are. So I think we're really excited about that. We really see AI and I think we all see AI right now as our very smart interns, who just help us at things we do, help us at making money, help us at work. And, we're very excited to bring that kind of, bring that to the dealer network.
Cool. Faizaan, what about yourself?
Well, I just have an analogy. Actually, I was just thinking about it as you were talking
Sure.
here. Looking at the role of the F&I manager. I think about it in sort of I'm a biohacker, so to speak, right? So I use this device over here, which tracks all my health metrics, and AI gives me suggestions on a daily basis. Versus working out with an in-person trainer who hit or miss sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes great, but not someone I'm checking in constantly on a daily basis with to getting sort of a health check-in. Is that maybe where F&I goes as well? It's one thing to get F&I information from a data set, to learn that there is more potholes in my zip code. There's a 20% above the national average than it is to hear it from a human being as well.
Yeah.
I almost, you're seeing it across the board. You're seeing us become more and more trusting of our LLMs, of GPT. There are articles out recently about people going down the GPT rabbit hole, so to speak, where there's just full trust and full ability to share all your information you wouldn't maybe be comfortable with sharing with an F&I manager, but you will share with your language model. So I think that is playing out pretty aggressively now, and it's going to mean AI enabled F&I, very much so.
Awesome.
Erik, a bit of a theme there, isn't it? So AI enabled, But, I think what goes through my mind is firstly that kind of principle that if you're not with your customer, then somebody else is.
Sure.
All right. So if you're not with our customer, somebody else is. That applies to a dealer. That applies to a OEM. That applies to all of us. So I think the other kind of aspect is really, what Darwin would have said would have been, it's not the strongest that survive, or the fittest necessarily. It's the ones that adapt most to their environment. So we're living in wonderful times. There's a lot of change, but with change comes a ton of opportunities. So I think this is something, particularly from a business point of view, to really take some time to think about that. So I think overall, from what I've seen in terms of what the team is doing, NETSOL Technologies team in the AI space, it's the most progressive kind of automotive financial digital retail provider I've seen out there. That's not my words, that's others too. So really commending the team in the work we've been doing on the digital retail space end to end. And if I think then about that kind of longer term view, then ultimately I think this customer intimacy is really where it's all at. So through knowledge and understanding, through maybe AI-enabled processes, having a much better understanding of the future strategy of our dealers or OEM, and how we can play that kind of role again as really a key partner for building out the ecosystem. But I think we're all the same when it comes to having a great customer experience, whether it's in a restaurant, whether it's buying a new car or having a great service experience. The great companies of today and tomorrow will be the ones that really kind of, I would say, provide consistent, outstanding customer experience. But the ability of AI is really to personalize that to Erik's needs.
Totally.
So that personalization, I think, is really where it's at. And I think that's the role we'll continue to play at NETSOL Technologies, and I'll kind of focus on, staying with our customer and being with our customer, making sure that nobody else is with our customer. So first of choice.
Awesome. Faraz, I'm going to direct this next one to you as well. So let's talk a little bit about the dealership model. In the age of AI, obviously lots of change within that model, and add in the complexity of the D2C model now, right? That we're seeing a lot of OEMs sort of gravitating towards. But I'm curious, is there a path for the dealership model and the D2C model to thrive alongside of each other?
Yeah, I think the dealership model will only evolve and take on more digital transformation efforts and bring in smarter tools. The OEMs who have dealer franchises, who are our clients as well, they obviously study the likes of Tesla and look at everything from the car to the retail model to the in life cycle, in asset experience, and they're taking a lot of notes and looking for ways to leverage their competencies and set themselves apart, but also create similar experiences. So I think there's a lot of advantage. The type of infrastructure process that that's established with OEMs and dealer franchises. So I think leveraging those competencies, but establishing the fine digital retail, omni-channel retail process is going to be key. And I really believe a lot of the long-standing OEMs will succeed, but others who don't push for that kind of change from an OEM perspective and a dealer franchise perspective might start to struggle a bit as more of these D2C models and entrants come in. But I think it's going to be super important. The one of the biggest challenges that dealers sometimes don't even know they have is they are using multiple systems to get a deal done. And they can do that with their eyes closed. That's, how much muscle memory they have in keying in data on 5 or 6 different windows, 5 or 6 different systems. And they're comfortable. They're happy. You ask a lot of them if they have any pain points in that. And when you get into it, yes, they'll probably describe some, but initially they are very happy with their process. Although it might be old systems, it's a lot of screens, it might be less efficient. So I think it's going to be super important for, I see podcasts all the time in our industry, sending the right message to dealers. You need to adopt digital retail, digital transformation, meet the customer where they are, yada, yada, yada. Absolutely the right message. But I think what's important, what we are obsessed with is our end customer too. And it's going to be our job as the technology provider to not just install the product one time, give a initial onboarding and hope that the dealer will adopt. It's going to take a lot of enablement, ongoing, coaching, and really getting, spending a lot of time with the dealer to enable them and get them into the system and get them used to it, into what is going to be a consolidated one, web-based portal to do the entire deal rather than have to touch different systems with all the right integrations. So it's, I think it's going to be really our job as the vendor to enable the dealers and get them very comfortable and spend a lot of time and optimize based on their feedback rather than say, you need to do this to survive. And here it is, you're on your own. So that's going to, I think, be a make it or break it between our success and not in our digital retail transformation.
One word really comes to mind that we at NETSOL think about a lot of, and that's flexibility. The dealership, the situation on the ground at the dealership is dynamic. It is changing hour by hour. And so NETSOL really prides itself on flexibility. If you want your dealer process to be a kick-ass lead generator, we are a kick-ass lead generator. We've proven it with Mini. We've increased lead flow by 5x for Mini. They've increased their conversions to 23%. Wow. So it's had direct revenue impact. If you want your process to be more end-to-end, you have the flexibility to make it more end-to-end. And you might want to change that. That might be a daily change. There might be days that it makes sense to go end-to-end. There might be days to make it a kick-ass lead generator. You've got to have the flexibility to be able to work. And I think that's what dealers are really looking for. Mm-hmm. They want to see that they're able to adapt to the situation on the ground.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think what goes through my mind there, Erik, listening to the conversation is really the importance of a joint strategy. Yeah. So joint strategy between the OEM, overall, the dealer, and ourselves. So that 3-party joint strategy is super important. So that omni-channel, multiple different touch points on the transaction. Of course, we want it to be seamless. We want it to be fast. We want it to be super efficient, and we want it to be smart, So I think the joint strategy is where, we need to spend the time upfront, working together as partners.
Yep.
Yeah, so partnership philosophy is super important. And each of us play a really critical role in providing that kind of infrastructure, the systems and the processes to really deliver world-class, seamless customer service. Yeah. For sure, we can pivot on short-term needs programs, and I think the mini program and digital approach is a great case study, where we've demonstrated real innovation in terms of the process, faster market, and really delivering results. But I think what's critical in these days, particularly when there's a lot of, I'd say, short-term change, is really the key joint strategy overall, making sure that when we execute in a coordinated way to really maximize overall dealer to consumer value. Yeah.
Richard, can I just follow up? Do you think for those three parties from the outset, the incentives are aligned?
I think you have to do work on alignment of incentives. I think so. Generally speaking, yes. If the incentive is to deliver the best-in-class customer experience, I think we're all kind of behind that. I think the questions we have to kind of think about there is really how we align the development of technical platforms in order to drive greatest value. What I have seen personally is when an OEM works hand-in-hand joint strategy with their dealer body, they can create a formidable service capability. And so instead of it being, maybe more of a arm's length relationship, when it's an arm in arm joint strategy,
much stronger.
There it's that formidable combination of great product and great service is a formidable combination.
Sure.
And the formidable combination comes through strategic thoughts about how we approach that, worked out around the table on a joint strategy overall, and ultimately alignment of economic and also, I'd say, customer incentives.
Sure.
But if the customer's happy, normally everybody's happy. So I think, the way we generate more revenues and profits is to delight more customers.
Sure.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I want to point this next one to you, Faizaan. Let's talk a little bit about agentic commerce, and maybe just to start, could you provide us with more of just a definition? What is it, and how is it going to, potentially transform how people buy, sell vehicles?
Sure. Well, it's starting for sure. It starts with ChatGPT queries. You're sharing your health data. You're talking to about, probably other economic decisions you're making. Simply, where are we going next? You're going to ask, it's going to have all your data, and you're going to say you're looking for a car.
Yeah.
And it's going to, potentially even knowing your financial information, eventually, it's going to suggest the vehicle and where it's stocked and where the inventory is, and it's going to give you a link to go and start that digital retail process.
Wow.
So we're there now. I mean, we are now, you're seeing it already in Google's revenue. They're starting to downtick a little bit, right? So GPT and the language models are starting to eat into the greatest behemoth in the history of capitalism, which is the Google search business. And it's only going to continue accelerating. So we are going to move away from, effectively a user on a web renderer doing an e-commerce process to literally just talking to their assistant and going through that flow, maybe fully through voice, is the world that we're very rapidly entering into now.
Cool.
I think we all should think about when that first time we actually buy a product through an AI query, and I imagine each of us personally will end up doing that in the next maybe 2 years or so.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
What do you think that means for the dealers, for us?
I when we were talking about the Google of buying a vehicle in the mid 2010s, I always had this idea that I just want to tell that search engine a few words and for it to recommend me things. Speed, I would love, a high performance vehicle. Sound, we all know I need a good sound system. Comfort, of course, I'm sure anyone would type that. And the rest, as Faizaan says, the rest you probably know about me. You know what I can afford by now. you know what I've driven before, my family situation, if I have kids, where I live. But here are the 3 keywords, and now recommend me things. Obviously I did, like I said, I looked at a bunch of influencer reviews for the Lucid. I did a bunch of my research, but agentic commerce to me is someone else or something else doing all that research in a smarter, quicker way, and giving me results much faster to make quicker decisions, and potentially interacting with a different agent, for the dealer who I'm interested in for that brand, and potentially negotiating on my behalf. So from a consumer perspective, that's what I envision, how I might want to use an agent to help me with my research process in a vehicle purchase. But of course, on the other end, is there an agent helping facilitate at least, part of the transaction, getting things started, putting things in the right sort of direction for then ultimately, a dealer and a human to work with me and finalize things and close things off. So I think it's already happening now, maybe not from a automotive digital retail perspective. Companies are working on agentic flows. We're absolutely working on it. They might not be on the market this moment, but they're coming very soon, and things are going to change real quick in terms of how consumers use that to identify and select, and how the sellers use that to reach the consumer.
So just to add further, I mean, how are we addressing it at NETSOL, right? So in this world, user experience sort of recedes in the background, but APIs become even more important.
Sure.
APIs are going to be talking to other APIs. There's going to be agents in the middle of that. There's going to be MCP, which is another action-oriented protocol that's effectively APIs for agents as well. These become even more and more important as time goes on.
Awesome. Richard, any thoughts on how agents may transform the OEM model?
Well, Erik, I'm learning every day. So, that's the first thing. So this
Me too.
agentic kind of perspective. I suppose, at an enterprise level and as well as at consumer level, the key focus is how do I make great business decisions?
Yeah.
Or how do I make great consumer decisions? So I kind of think of it in those terms. So if the agentic support is driving better knowledge based on data, better knowledge, and turning it into wisdom, then I'm all for that. Mm-hmm. So I think it sounds a bit simplistic, but I think ultimately that's what we're talking about. We're talking about smarter ways, better ways to actually make faster, smarter decisions. So what I learned through some of the work we did in the last few years is that if we look at the implementation of AI type solutions in a business enterprise system, probably the first thing we should do there, Erik, is really look at our underlying business processes and just make sure they're fit for purpose and fit for AI enablement. Mm-hmm. Nothing worse than putting AI into a bad process,
Sure.
So first rule, look at your processes overall, make sure that they are AI enabled, and ultimately whether it's kind of decision making around credit risk, whether it's decision around risk management in general.
Yep.
It certainly can be aspects of how we enhance customer service. But ultimately for our OEM business partners, they're looking to make great business decisions. I think that's where we have clear alignment. And I think in the customer context, coming back to making informed kind of consumer choices around products or services, I think they're asking for the same kind of input. Yeah. So if it does that, it's going to be a winner. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Faraaz, do you want to talk a little bit more about some of the AI use cases that we're working on at NETSOL?
Yeah, I mean, I think I could talk all day about it. The most exciting ones from a digital retail perspective, again, predictive insights for sales and profitability. So understanding the customer really well and what they want, and what's right for them, and being able to position that at the right time and give that insight to the dealer and also give that dealer some help in positioning that through some AI. So that's one I'm super excited about. And the other one is the personalization, the personalized customer experience. So, if you're a new buyer, first time buyer, you might have a certain set of steps and a certain journey, an optimized journey to get into a vehicle. Whereas if you're a returning, customer of the same brand, or you're starting with a trade-in of a vehicle, just based on your situation and your purchase situation, you could benefit from maybe a different set of steps and a different sequence of actions you need to take to get into that vehicle. So I think, personalizing customer journeys is one I'm super excited about. Might take some time to get there, but I think that really plays into creating that more immersive experience, bringing back the test drive without having to leave and spend a couple hours at the dealership. So that's something, super excited about.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Richard, I have a question for you. If you could give one piece of advice to automotive leaders that are navigating this transformation, what would it be?
One piece of advice. Okay, so I've got many. I think I would kind of describe it that we're living in a time of great opportunity and great change. So I think there's probably a couple of key aspects. One, it's about strategy. We spoke a lot about strategy today in our sessions. So I think as a business leader, with your team, having a clear strategy and leading with the long view, I would say. I think that's, even though there's a lot of change, leading with the long view, staying focused on what you want to achieve in that time frame is super important. In saying that, as Drucker said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Yeah. So when it comes to execution, the other side of the answer is that continue to work with your leaders and your people and team, really in terms of unpacking your strategy so it's fully understood within an organization, supporting the culture of the organization in terms of execution to do the right thing for your people, the right thing for your dealers, and the right thing for your customers. That would be my advice. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. Faizaan, any words on your end?
Yeah, work with NETSOL. That'd be my advice. No, honestly, we are. Richard knows. Richard's been on the other side of the table with us. We move quickly. We're tech forward. We have domain in the space, and if you can really bring the intersection of domain and technology together, you can achieve some pretty amazing results. And we're on time and on budget. So that would be really, my advice. Yeah.
Excellent. Faraaz?
Yeah, it would be that innovation doesn't have to be a long, drawn out. You should have a long-term innovation strategy. Always be thinking about that, but it can start today. I think getting creative and experimenting right away is actually easier than it seems. And so I'll tell you a quick story about that. I forget the dealership name. I think something like Saint Germain Toyota. A couple of years ago, VR was, and it still is kind of, a thing, but virtual reality headsets really coming up from all kinds of different companies. Meta, right? Oculus was coming out. So they just said, let's try a virtual reality transaction. So they just bought some Oculus headsets, couple $100. And they created like a remote desktop space within the headset using the same old systems. It wasn't a new software they used. They got a customer into maybe a Zoom or some, virtual conferencing call. And they just did a transaction through a virtual reality headset. They got the whole deal done, all the paperwork. It's like the customer was in the office. And it was just one day they woke up and said, let's just try this, see what it's like. And it, they really loved that they tried it, and it really proved that you can do deals very quickly, you don't have to be physically together with that person, but there are means to make it seem like you are together, right? So I think it's a great example of just innovation can happen right now, tomorrow, in small ways. It can start today, and we should, continue to experiment, try different things. I think we talked about it a lot today. Doing the same thing, expecting a different result, is a definition of insanity. You can try a different thing, every hour of your day, and see, what happens, and gauge the results of that experimentation. So yeah, that would be my one advice for the day.
Amazing. Well, thank you all for joining us today, and thank you, listeners. Really appreciate it. If you'd like to learn more about NETSOL, please visit us, netsoltech.com.